Josh Hardie, thanks very much for joining me this afternoon. We're talking just after the CBI's annual conference. What were the key takeaways for you?
Well, after 3 days, I suppose the key takeaway is I'm still awake, and that's a good start. But look, I think it was an absolutely fantastic experience. Probably three things stood out for me. One is, I mean, like so many of us, this was the first time we've digitized a conference. We normally have 1 day face to face. This was 3 days online, and you know what? It works. I'm sure in the future we'll do a blended model, but actually that ability for people to use technology to dip in and dip out, it meant when we hold it face to face, we probably can get about 1,500 people in the room just because of capacity. We reached 10,000, and 3 million impressions on Twitter. I think about 70,000 video views. So actually a learning for all of us who hold these events about how to harness that power of technology. Maybe be bolder about it and push ourselves on it, but then hopefully in the future bring back some of that nice face-to-face stuff as well, because you do miss talking to members and to people. I think the second thing that stood out was, look, it is crazy times right now, and we know the pressure that businesses, our members are under, dealing with coronavirus and the pandemic and lockdowns, dealing with the uncertainty around Brexit. And of course, we also right now, when I'm talking, have the uncertainty of the US election. I mean, hopefully by the time you're listening, that's resolved. And that's hugely stressful for businesses, but reasons to be optimistic. So much of the conversation always comes back to the longer term stuff: net zero, diversity and inclusion, skills, tackling regional inequalities. It is amazing for me how we gravitate more than ever before, mental health, back to these issues that we didn't talk about in the same way years ago. And that commitment from business to really act on those things shone through every single day and every session. And then I think the final thing that shone through is the importance of partnership. One of the advantages of having 3 days actually was we could bring through many more voices because we have more time, more space. So whether it's ex-prime ministers or members of the royal family or charities or unions or think tanks, actually more different voices coming in and talking to the CBI and our members. And what's the one thing everybody agrees on? The more we can work together, the more we'll achieve. And the Prime Minister came and said, the number 10's door is always open to business. It's always open to the CBI. Let's use that, because with the challenges ahead, we're going to need to pool all of our insight, all of our creativity, and all of our members' investment to move forward. So I think a really positive 3 days overall.
You mentioned the B word there, Brexit, Josh. Clearly the CBI has been a really strong advocate for as close a relationship with the EU as possible after the transition period. We're still in a great deal of uncertainty. What are you hearing?
Well, I think what are we hearing? First of all, what are we saying? Because I think there is a debate when you get to the end game, when things are really tough, and when the deal that could be struck is what is called a skinny deal. There is still a bit of a feeling out there amongst some that is there that much difference between a skinny deal and no deal? Can we not just move on? Isn't certainty the most important thing? So I think, first of all, being very, very clear that even with a deal that focuses on tariff and quota-free trade, the difference for so many businesses between that and no deal is absolutely huge. Partly immediately, tariff and quota-free is a huge deal for goods, but also for those services businesses, whilst there may not be that much in the deal, it gives a platform. The relationship between the UK and the EU will still be intact. Those conversations that need to happen about mobility, about data, about aviation, about energy, actually can still happen. Whereas no deal, the blame game begins, doesn't it? The relationship will not be in a strong place. It could be quite a long time before we start to tackle some of those issues that really, really matter. So a deal really matters. We're hearing, look, more positive noises. Day by day, the negotiating teams are working through issues. Not helped, I have to say, by the fact that so many countries have now gone back into lockdown, and so their meetings are limited to 4 people face to face, and that's a challenge actually. But those two big issues, fishing, state aid, non-regression clauses, still remain. We hope they'll be able to work through them. We feel confident that they'll be able to work through them. But as we head into November proper, every day counts, because even with a deal, there's a lot of preparation to do. And for many businesses unable to prepare because of COVID, actually until there's a deal in front of them, they'll wait. And there are rational reasons for that. So get that deal as soon as possible. No more delaying, no more games, no more fighting for all of our countries, not just for the UK. Then we can start to move on to smoothing that pathway into January. And that'll be the next conversation. What are the easements? What's the facilitation we need to make in order to help businesses manage the change as effectively as possible?
I mean, for our industry, we're looking at potential tariffs on a great deal of the supply of bathroom products into the UK of between 2 and 10%. So quite a large inflationary impact if there is no deal. So that is something that we're worried about. Putting negotiations aside, what do businesses need to be doing within the BMA membership right now in order to prepare?
Well, I mean, of course, it will depend on the nature of your business, but getting to grips as much as possible with, I suppose, what one might call the no regrets actions, because there are changes whether there's a deal or no deal, particularly around customs, around borders. We know that not all of it is clear. You know, there is still more needed from government to lay out exactly what is needed, but there is information out there. Please visit the CBI transition hub. It's free. It's open. You don't have to be a member. This is our national duty. So rather than me going through every area, there are sources of information. Visit hubs like ours. There are others that can help you with checklists, work through some of the questions that you need to ask yourself. It's not straightforward. It does take time. There is no avoiding that. But it's also the blunt reality that the more businesses can do to prepare, the better able they'll be able to cope with any change. But it's not all about what we do today. I touched on this before, but the FTA only gets us halfway. It doesn't, not everything that we need to do is within the FTA. So we are setting up a task force with the government to actually hear from businesses live, I hope, after the deal is done, so that the government can learn from your experiences and prioritise their actions, whether that's support that they give business on the ground or whether that's actually additional things they need to negotiate with the EU to make life easier. So do all you can. It'll vary on your circumstances to prepare right now. Use us, but also feed in your insights, because this game isn't over for some time yet.
I mean, what we're hearing back from our members is a desperate need for clarity around the status of Northern Ireland and how we act as a single market with Northern Ireland. We're hearing about concerns on customs and the ability to process customs at the rate that the customs declarations at the rate that they're going to be needed to be processed. What messages are you telling government already about what the needs of businesses are?
Well, I mean, on goods, very much in that area, we've got to get the border operating model up and clear, because yes, bits of it are clear and the government will push back quite strongly, but until it's properly clear, actually a lot of businesses quite rightly will say, well, I'm not going to half prepare. Give me the information I need to prepare fully. This is why we're trying to set that task force up with government. They have, you know, we speak to them regularly. They have engaged with business. They have asked for insight, but not perhaps in this fully systematic, organised way that even maybe we did last time. Some of that because we are in the midst of a pandemic. So I think really focusing government's attention on the extra work they need to do to give the detail to businesses that they need in order to prepare. But also we cannot, you know, this isn't just about the planning. This is also about still relentlessly providing that economic evidence for why we need a deal. You know, recently, 2 weeks ago, we came out with 71 trade associations, you know, representing pretty much every sector of the UK, all of whom were saying a deal gives us that foundation for recovery next year. No deal makes that very, very hard. So it's about the data and the insight and the preparedness, but it's also about just keeping that insight going so that everyone in the UK, but also in the EU, genuinely understands that their job, the negotiators, the politicians, is to get a deal. The idea that we could be in a second lockdown and dealing with no deal is unconscionable. So holding their feet to the fire, keeping the pressure up there and getting as much movement on some of the final steps that government needs to take to provide clarity as possible.
We could ruminate about Brexit all day, couldn't we? Let's move on to something a bit more positive, I hope, and that's the great advocacy work that CBI has been doing around green retrofit and achieving net zero carbon within the UK's built environment, and particularly around the housing stock. BMA is passionately advocating for the inclusion of water efficiency within that agenda. To what extent is that something that CBI can get on board with?
Oh, absolutely. Look, I think one of the sort of national conversations that the CBI are very involved in and have been for a long time is that whole conversation about businesses' role in society. And the fact that the CBI, businesses, organisations like you were out there calling for a net zero target was actually a bit of a surprise for people, because I think that the sort of received wisdom was businesses are resistant to all of those things. So I think, firstly, that championing, that advocacy for businesses really driving forward the innovation, the investment, the creativity needed for the UK to hit that target is really, really important. And COP26, that's a chance for the UK to stand on the world stage and actually showcase the innovation and the commitment of businesses. So the more that we can stand up and show that we get this, we believe it, and we are acting on it, is important. Of course, that requires a huge range of activity, and we need a white paper to give us the framework and to guide us on that, although that is coming very, very soon. And it touches not just retrofitting homes, but transport, the production, everything. But within that, efficient use of resources. It's the core of all of it, isn't it? And water is absolutely fundamental amongst that. We've been lobbying. We think we do support calls for 110 litre standardisation per person standardisation across the country. But like so many of these things, it's not just about blunt instruments. A lot of this is not just about what business do; it's about what consumers do as well. How do you capture behaviour change? You do it by nudge. You do it by persuasion. You do it by emotional engagement. You do it by exciting them with new products that are great, not by always banning products or making their life difficult. You do it by providing lead times so that not just businesses but consumers actually can adapt their behaviour over time in a way that works for them, not suddenly have to change. So yes, let's get on this journey, but let's do it in a way. I mean, this isn't about protecting business. This is actually about doing it in a way that works and that takes people with us. Because when you take people with you and you drive it through innovation that makes life better, it sticks. When you tell people what to do, you risk actually a bit of a kickback in it not sticking so much. So I think the interesting challenge is as much a behavioural one as it is about utter standardisation and rules.
Oh yeah, absolutely delighted to hear that your position there and your views there is completely on board with what BMA is saying in all of our advocacy work. So great to hear. We were speaking on the day that the Bank of England has just released its latest forecast, and some concerning pictures they're painting there around a W-shaped recovery rather than that V-shape that we were looking at. What's the economic and business outlook for 2021?
I think, I'd start with saying I've learnt more letters about economic recovery in the last few months than in the rest of my life put together. I think it's more of an alphabet soup now than anything else, because it could be V, U, K, W. One thing I think we have to remember is it's not set. Everything we do now actually has a dramatic impact on what the world looks like, what the UK looks like tomorrow. We know the risk. We know that with the twin threats, pandemic and Brexit, those swirling seas of uncertainty that businesses are dealing with, the risk of high levels of unemployment that scars so unevenly and for such a long time, of underinvestment in businesses, of a drop back in innovation, of indebtedness in businesses, could all come home to roost next year if we don't take the right action. But rather than predicting what that might look like, there are so many variables. Let's concentrate on getting the variables right now. What does that mean? That means the right level of financial support for businesses through COVID. It means keeping as much of the economy open as possible. That's not me arguing against lockdowns, but even in the current national lockdown, 90% of the business of the economy can stay open, not operating at capacity, but firms are now let's respect that. Let's use that to keep things going. It means actually business and government working really well together, because businesses can't respond to overnight speculation and rumours, and suddenly re-engineering what they're doing. They don't always know whether they're meant to be open or shut. The more business and government can actually work together, the simpler that becomes, and that enables valuable time and resources to be spent on resilience and job protection rather than wondering and reacting. So what we do over the coming 4 weeks actually is absolutely fundamental. So there's that side of it. There's also, of course, the Brexit deal that we've discussed and we know is so important. Get that over the line. Start working with the EU on making it a simple thing to adapt to, because that saves billions. And those billions will enable us to bounce back better on the other side. So there are lots of things at the moment. Other things I should mention. One is get rapid testing up and running at scale for business. We've seen it working in other countries. It can open up our airports. It can open up our businesses. It can help us test for negatives as well as positives. Get, of course, not that it's in our control, but it's in someone's control, the vaccine here as soon as possible. But until that, good financial support and rapid testing are probably two of the most important things that we can get in place. So let's get that right. And I know from all the many, many thousands of businesses that the CBI talk to, that the business commitment to actually come out the other side, to support the government's vision of an innovative, competitive, fair economy is undimmed, even by the challenges that we face. But we need some help and support to get there so that we can do our duty and deliver on that commitment.
Josh, you've been incredibly generous with your time. Thank you very much for joining me this afternoon, and always great to catch up.
That's an absolute pleasure, Tom. Thanks very much indeed for having me.